Rev up your engines! Subaru Foresters. Are they good SUVs? Had problems in the past, but the Forester, a lot of them are pretty well made. Now this is a 2014, and you can't complain at the price. The customer got it totally free. Unfortunately, it was because his father died of cancer and he inherited the car. But be that as it may, Subarus have always had history of head gaskets blowing on the engines and transmissions that go out. This is a 2014 four-cylinder boxer engine. They figured the head gasket sealants out long before 2014, so they don't have problems with that at all. And this one has a CVT transmission. Now, you know I'm not a big fan of CVT transmissions, but the big reason of that is Jatco, which is Nissan's subsidiary, that makes the worst CVT transmissions in the world. Strangely enough, Subaru has used Jatco automatic transmissions in their cars throughout history, and then later they used the Jatco design that Subaru built themselves, but it's still based on the Jatco design. But Subaru has never used Jatco CVT transmissions. Way back in 1989, they had a CVT which they designed and built themselves. The CVT in this is designed and built by Subaru, which of course is owned by Fuji Heavy Industries, a very large company with a lot of money and a whole bunch of engineers who know what they're doing. Like any CVT transmission, you want to service it. I'm going to change the filter today, show how it's done. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with these things. This one was built in Japan. They're excellent vehicles, priced when they're brand new. Of course, he got his for nothing. He can't complain at all. It's all free from here on for him. The only problem that really occurred to the car is that his father was sick for years, so he parked it a long time, and some rats or mice got in. You can see where they chewed stuff away there. And they messed up some of the wiring. So when he inherited, he put one of those ultrasonic devices that chases rats and mice away. Like I showed one of my old videos. You see those? They actually work. You get a good one. And if you wonder, does it really work? I've got ultrasonic headphones. If you get a pair of those with a little sending unit, turn it on. If you hear it going, wee-oo, with ultrasonic headphones, that's what the mice and rats hear. They don't like it, so they run away. You want to keep them out of the car. And if you do, you don't have to worry about anything. Now, it's a nice little SUV. They're comfortable. You can see they got a lot of space. Plenty of leg room. Certainly don't want to compare this to the Toyota 86 I did the other day. Leg room was my little finger between the back and the front seat. And being a Subaru, it's all-wheel drive. Subaru's been making all-wheel drives forever. They got it down pat. They really don't have problems if you maintain them. That's why you're changing the fluid on this one today. So jack it up in the air, get it nice and high, and stick the jack stand on so we don't get pancaked. And as we crawl under, pretty simple here. There's the drain plug. So we'll get our pan, and that's a 14 millimeter, and we'll break it loose. Now we can do the rest of the finger. There she goes. Then it stopped draining. We'll put that back on with a little torque wrench. Nice and tight. Now, of course, the evil swine left out a dipstick, so there's an add plug. In this case, you go on the driver's side, the left side, and it's right up here. As you can see, it's an 8 millimeter Allen hex that goes right on there. And that's where you pump the fluid back in. And we just push it. Ah, there it goes. Once it gets loose, it's simple to get rid of. Then you can do it with your finger. And that's the cam. So, since the evil swine don't give a dipstick, how do you know how much to put in? Well, his father's the original owner. The transmission's dry, so we know it was full. We'll just measure what came out, and we'll pump the same amount back in. We get a nice little hand pump. We put the end end into the hole and pump in what we took out. Follow it up. There's the pump, and we just pump. It takes a while because there's quite a bit of stuff coming in. But you can see the stuff is pretty much clear, and the stuff that came out was pretty dirty. It just pumps it in. Then of course we get the socket, tighten it back up, and these do have a reusable gasket. It's made out of aluminum. You can use it over many times. It's not going to leak. Just make sure it's tight. Don't listen to these people that say it's a lifetime fluid. It is not, especially in a CVT transmission. Personally, if I owned one, which I probably never will, but if I did, I'd probably swatch it up every 30,000 miles because you're only changing a percentage of it. But if you go every 60 or so, at least that's okay. Just make sure you use the right fluid, and if you do it yourself like I did, you measure what comes out, you put what goes back in. Understand, you can't even trust mechanics on this one. My old photographer in Houston, he had a Toyota Camry. I was out of town. He took his car to get the transmission fluid changed on a CVT at some crazy shop. And guess what? They didn't do it right. And about 5,000 miles later, his tranny went out and cost him $5,500 for a new one. You can't trust people these days. My daughter-in-law, Sienna, if you remember a video I made a while back, she got a new tire, then her car shook like mad, right? So I said, what tire is it? She says it's the right rear. So I took the right rear tire off, put it on my balancer, and it was going to the side. And I looked, and it had, I'm not kidding, about 36 weights on it, right? So I just got my chisel, I chiseled all 36 weights off, then I put the bare tire back on the balancer, and it was perfectly balanced by itself. It was completely off. And this is at a tire store, so this is why I make these videos. You want to learn how to do it yourself, do it right, and you won't have any problems. So now you learned a couple of things today. Why CVT transmissions in these Subaru Foresters are decent, because they're not made by Jacko, they're made by Subaru. That their head gaskets don't blow anymore on the 4-cylinder. 6-cylinders still have problems. But you also learned that it's not that hard to change CVT fluid. You can do it yourself, do it right, and not worry about a $5,000 transmission breaking down when you get 100-something thousand miles on it. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Bishai says, Scotty got an 07 Honda Accord 2.4 with an automatic, 172,000 miles. Run fines, but it's the original timing chain. I asked the dealer, he said, don't worry, because once the chain starts to stretch, the check engine light will come on. Never heard of this. Is it true? Well, to some extent, it's true, because if it gets really stretched, the data between the crank sensor and the cam sensor will be off, and it'll start tripping codes. But the other way that they go bad is the tensioner or something goes bad, they'll rattle. If your engine sounds normal, doesn't rattle on startup, and runs perfectly fine, yeah, don't worry about it. I've seen Hondas with 400,000 miles. They still got the original timing chain. The main thing is change your engine oil and filter regularly, because that's what lubricates the chain. You use good oil, and on that particular engine, my advice is switch to the new GF6 oil. You don't use the 016 oil. You use whatever yours says. If it says 020, they make a GF6 oil that's 020. Use the same weight, but use the GF6 oil. It's better oil, and it lubricates the chain better too. That's what it was designed for. Pepito59 says, Scotty, I got a 2020 Honda Civic Type R. I'm concerned with the transmission. It's a manual, as you know. And I'm wondering about their quality and life expectancy. I'm noticing gear grinding in some gears often. Is it something I should be worried about? Honda makes excellent engines and transmissions, but if abused, anything will break down. You're probably driving like a maniac. You bought a Civic Type R. It's a baby race car. I've ridden them, and they are fun to drive. I would never own one as their everyday driver because they ride too rough. My wife would never want to ride. They're bouncing around, banging all over the place. I'm assuming you're driving like a maniac. If you drive like a maniac, you will wear things out. I'm sure you're downshifting, revving everything up. Eventually, you will wear things out. Now, I have customers with them that have 140,000 miles, and theirs don't grind. They drove them correctly and didn't do too many downshifts and over rev, but they're well made. It's like anything else. If you throttle it all the time, eventually it will wear out. Now, in your case, I would just say keep driving it, and if it does go out, then get another transmission when it breaks. Very few people know how to rebuild those things. I would just get another transmission if it finally did wear out. If you're really throttling it, you might wear that transmission out, and then just get another one and throttle it. That's the thing about race cars. You got a baby race car. You know, in an actual race car that races professionally, they generally rebuild the engines and transmissions after every race or every other race, so their lifespans are even less because they throttle them as high as they can, as fast as they can for 400 or 500 miles at a whack, and they wear them out that fast. Kevin B4 says, I have a water leak in my 07 Matrix. I just bought 07 Matrix, 94,000 miles. A lot of water accumulates on the passenger side floor if it rains. I look at the AC hose that's attached. The door drains are not clogged. Any ideas? Odds are, because of its age, that the seals on your door are probably worn. We open the door, you see the weather stripping. They're worn, ripped, kinked. That's what will happen. Now, make sure those door drains are clean, because there's a bunch of them under the door. Poke them with little needles, and if you see dirt come out, then get an air hose and squirt air in there and try to blow all the crud out. And sometimes, if you look at the outer seals on your window, on the outside, when you're standing outside, you'll see that rubber's all ripped and torn. I'd replace them if that's the case, because doors get water inside and they drain out. But if those are ripped and torn, it gets too much water if there's pouring in. It'll take a little bit of water, but not a ton of water. Odds are it's your weather strip, on that side that's going. Also, of course, check the windshield. If you bought it used, who knows if it was wrecked, maybe they didn't put a good windshield seal when they replaced the windshield, and then it will leak through the windshield, so you can try that. And if you get confused, get a bucket of water, put some like red dye in it, and pour it in different parts. And then if you see the red dye coming out of one area, oh look, it came out of the windshield when I poured it on the windshield, then you can find where the leak's coming from. Dye in water works great. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.